You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
For the past few weeks, the controversy over the wearing of hijab by students has rippled across coastal Karnataka, with multiple incidents now taking place, the issue reaching the High Court and even drawing global attention. The hijab row has been gaining strength ever since six Muslim girls were denied entry into their classrooms at a government pre-university college in Karnataka's Udupi for wearing the hijab. But this quickly turned communal after a group of boys sporting saffron shawls went to protest against these girls attending classes wearing hijab. In another viral video, female students wearing saffron shawls could also be heard chanting Jai Shri Ram in an act of protest against the wearing of hijab. However, the action taken by the state government and the Karnataka High Court recently has drawn the biggest criticism. In today's episode, the Quint South Bureau Chief Nicola Henry joins me from Udupi to talk about how this controversy started, how it is connected to the politics of the state, and what's the ground reality at the moment. Later in the episode, you'll hear from Akasha Sachdev, the Quint's legal editor, to get a breakdown of the state government's order on the issue and the interim order passed by the Karnataka High Court.
You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline making news for you, and I'm your host, Himmat.
We first speak to Nicola Henry, the Quint's South Bureau Chief, who has been reporting on the ground from Udupi on this issue. So, Nicola, first, can you speak about the situation on the ground at the moment? How is it going through and reporting this issue as well? And what are your conversations also with students, with colleges?
The ground situation right now is largely peaceful, at least in Udupi and surrounding areas, basically the Udupi district, and also several other districts in Karnataka where protests were held for a ban on hijab. Those protests have kind of died down since the government declared a 3-day holiday for colleges, and now with the High Court upholding, a ban on religious clothing in these institutions, that situation is likely to stay calm for a while because of the sheer absence of hijab-wearing Muslim women in classes. So that's where it's a lull right now as far as protests go. But the underlying communal tensions still remain, and that's something we need to see whether that will actually explode later on.
So, can you also speak about the Karnataka being a hub of communal issues now? Because is it something new, or is this something which has always been like a part of Karnataka's history?
Karnataka has been a state where communal tensions have flared up even in the past, but there is an underlying history there where the coastal belt of Karnataka has always been a hub of right-wing communal activities and also right-wing communal groups, like be it erstwhile fringe elements like the Bajrang Dal, the VHP, or even local level right-wing groups like Hindu Jana Jagruti. So these groups have always had cadre strength and also a virtual kind of emotional support for their causes on ground. But it's very pertinent to understand that the flare up of these communal tensions are also ratified in some way or supported in some way by the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, because either through inaction or by even the MLAs or the MPs giving statements which would even flare up the issues brought up by these communal forces. For example, in this Udupi hijab row, which started off as a protest by a few Muslim girl students who wanted to go to their college wearing hijab. When they started raising this complaint, the first protest which happened was in Kundapura, which is slightly farther away from Udupi city, where some students in saffron shawls came and started protesting, saying that they'll also wear these shawls if Muslim women are allowed to wear hijab. So what happened there in Kundapura was that instead of capping that tendency of the students to kind of create a counter narrative towards a very basic religiously essential thing for the Muslim women, the BJP government remained largely silent about such a kind of protest. So that gave them kind of a support to go ahead and keep replicating this kind of protests in different places, and that's what really triggered this entire controversy, where students, even those unrelated directly to any Hindu right-wing organizations, they started staging these protests in saffron shawls, and that created a law and order situation in most of the educational institutions, where women were traditionally, since a long time, been wearing hijab.
Okay. Now, one of your stories also, which you reported from Udupi, was regarding the leak of information of 6 Muslim students of the Udupi Government Pre-University College for Girls. Can you speak on that as well, and how you came across the story and what went through it as well, your conversations with the students?
The government PU college for girls in Udupi, that's the first college where the girls basically asked for their the administration to allow them to wear hijab in their classes. So the basic thing there was that the administration basically said, no, you have not been wearing hijab earlier, now you cannot wear hijab. That's what they said. But the girls insisted and felt that they should be allowed their right to wear hijab whenever they choose to exercise it. So at that time, what really happened after that was to tarnish the image of these girls, who they are, what their backgrounds are. So one of them approached the Karnataka High Court, and the rumors around that time was that, she is from an affluent family, and all the girls in that institution who are protesting are from affluent families who are being funded from quote unquote outside. So which basically meant to say that these protests are being triggered by Muslim organizations and not by the girls themselves. So that was the first round of it. But after February 8th, what happened is that it kind of people kind of got to know that these girls are from backward economic backgrounds. Like some of them, are come from families which are very working class families, where parents work for daily wages. So you can't really, they realized, people who were running the campaign, that they are affluent, basically realized that that's not something which they can bank on for a long time. So the next step was to leak their personal information, which basically included all their details, including their home addresses, their phone numbers, their parents' names, their parents' phone numbers, their class 10 mark sheets, even their parental income. So when I got the document which was circulated in WhatsApp groups, saying that these are the girls who are behind the Udupi protests for hijab. What I first noticed was that it was not a typed out document. It was a document which was a scanned copy of a file. So what was the file? The file was, the admission form which these girls had submitted to the college. the government PU college for girls. So because it was a scanned copy, it became very apparent that the leak came from within the college, because no copy of this admission form will be available elsewhere, and the girls too corroborated that they had submitted the form only to the college, and it was addressed to the college. So the fact that a college administration thought that it was wise to leak such personal details of some girls who are protesting really showed the picture of a complicit institution which does not want the girls, the Muslim women, to voice their rights. And secondly, to make a big deal out of it. So the attempt, to some extent, the people who are circulating such messages about these girls, they are the third parties who are not involved either with the government or the college. They could be fringe elements. They could be people who are extremely communal to even realize that to even to the hilt perhaps. But the fact that a college administration basically thought that it would be wise to do something like this made me realize that the institution, which is run by the government, which is the BJP government in Karnataka, is actually complicit in this matter.
And I also understand that you spoke to these students as well who are protesting. So what was their reaction to their personal details, including their phone numbers, addresses, their parents' details as well, being leaked?
Yeah, so one of the girls whom I spoke to, she's a 17-year-old young woman from the college called Alia Azadi. So she, when I first met her, she was wearing a hijab, which was basically her school uniform, the school uniform scarf wrapped around her head. But the second time I met her, after her personal information got leaked, she was wearing a burqa and had covered her face. So I asked her why that was, because I had this hunch that it could be because her personal information was out. So she immediately said that my face is plastered across different WhatsApp groups. Everybody knows everything about me. All my personal details are out, and because of it, I'm not comfortable showing my face anymore. So I do not know whether she decided against it. She was brave enough to decide against it. But this being brave is not always something which should be which should be expected of a woman of from a 17-year-old woman who have other things to do, like for example her education. Yes. So the fact that they are being pushed to such they are being pushed to a corner, that they are being held up against a wall to whenever they try to voice their concerns, whenever they try to say that religion matters to us, being a Muslim, being a practicing Muslim matters to us, is just appalling, because it violates, first of all personal liberties, and at the same time it also shows that the people who are much more powerful than the young women who are protesting do not do not really care about what their futures could be, about their ambitions. That's another thing which Alia said, that I don't think that anybody cares about my ambitions or what I want to do anymore, because in this slugfest which is happening on ground, nobody even thinks twice to circulate such messages about her.
And this is just not even like a rumor or something that we can discredit. It is their personal information, their name, addresses, everything else. So it really speaks to like a 17-year-old mind also, who is, I'm sure, as worried as we were also when we were 17 about our trust standard marks and everything else, and all of it they have now to deal with this entire success.
Yes, and the girls and the young women who have been protesting, it's very brave of them to actually, hold the weight of this entire protest on their shoulders. And they have actually been shielding their family members, their homes, the people who are related to them, by being at the forefront of this protest. So the fact that, their families, their homes, which are supposed to be a safe spaces for them to be, at least after talking to 1,000 media people, after listening to everything with the college management or some MLA or the other from any part of Karnataka is saying, and by after facing all the saffron shawl protests and everything, when they go back home, at least they should feel safe. So that was denied when this information was leaked out, because they leaked out their home addresses. So if tomorrow somebody who gets access to this particular document will be actually able to walk to their home and say, hey, what are you doing?
Of course.
So it made them extremely vulnerable, and it is a huge lapse from the part of the college from where this information got leaked.
The entire controversy has now thrown up legal questions on the freedom of religion and whether the right to wear a hijab is constitutionally protected. And all of this started on 5th February after the state government issued an order regarding uniforms in educational institutions, which in short prohibits clothes which quote unquote disturb equality, integrity, and public law and order. However, several legal experts have pointed out that the order is vague and a clear misunderstanding of the law. On 31st January, a writ petition was filed in the Karnataka High Court by a Muslim girl student from Udupi seeking a declaration that wearing a hijab is a fundamental right. The plea stated that the Indian constitution guarantees the freedom of conscience and the right to profess, practice, and propagate religion. However, in a shock order, the court refused to pass an interim order allowing the girls to attend classes wearing the hijab until a final adjudication. According to Vakasha Sasde, the Quint's legal editor, there are serious deficiencies on law when it comes to both the state order on uniform and the court's interim order.
So, if we look at the order, there's a few things, there's a bunch of things which are sort of problematic with it. There's there are two things which you can look at which are worrying. One is when the government says that it's doing it under the Karnataka Education Act 1983. That's the first thing which is wrong with it, because I mean, if you look at the wording of the order, they're trying to say that they have a power under this to make school uniforms and uniforms in any kind of classroom mandatory. So that's the first part. Which the question is, does the act really allow them to do that? And then you come to, okay, provided there is some sort of power to give this under the act, or maybe there's a sort of related power, is this something which you can do, right? So on both the sort of central ability to do this as well as the way in which it's been done, there are question marks over that government order. And the thing is, because the Karnataka Education Act itself says nothing about uniforms, nor do the rules. So the act was passed in 1983. There are rules under it from 1995. None of these have anything of the sort which say anything about mandating uniforms under them. And there is a thing that the government can pass directions to facilitate, which are necessary or expedient for the act. But like having a uniform doesn't quite fit within any of the purposes of the act. The purpose of the act is to facilitate education. It's to ensure that you can have that in the state of Karnataka. So, I mean, to try and even say that, okay, under their power to issue directions, they could do this, even that is questionable. And, that's something which is going to be argued in the legal matters, which is now going forward as well. Now, the second part of it is, okay, what does the order itself say? Does the order say something which is, let's say, which is within the scope of what the government could do? And once again, the answer is that what the state of Karnataka is saying in its government order just seems really weird. It's saying stuff like, okay, they have to be, that you have to follow the uniforms which are prescribed. Where there's no specific uniform prescribed, you have to make sure that you don't wear any clothes which affect unity, harmony, integrity, which, I mean, in what world does wearing a set of clothes become, an incitement to public order? They use the term public law and order, which must not, which don't harm public law and order. I mean, in what way can clothes themselves do it, right? Okay, maybe if you're wearing a shirt saying go and commit genocide against a particular group, that's pretty much the only way in which wearing a set of clothes can be incitement to violence, which is what you need to be able to try and commit a public order offense. The clothes themselves cannot be said to violate equality, cannot be said to violate harmony, cannot be said to violate. It's about what you are doing as a person. So just the terminology in the order, it's just very, very, very strange. And the the fact that this is there in the government order, where it's using
Mm.
these terms which just cannot be applied, it just get like the concept of public order. We have years and years of Supreme Court judgments on what it is, and it's about a true sort of threat to public order, like of a whole city or something. You can't, like, a localized small little problem where someone creates an issue over it. That's not a
Mhm.
public order problem, right? So the
Yeah.
wording now, we've had a chance to, like, earlier we were having to rely on translations of the order which were given to the media. We've
Mhm.
now got, like, sort of an English translation. It says, shall adhere to the clothes which shall adhere to the requirements of equality and unity and shall not disturb public order. I mean, just
Mhm.
for a moment, ask yourself, in what world is it possible to now say that certain items of clothing are going to have to follow equality and unity? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
uniforms, the whole idea is that you try to make sure that, kids who don't have money are still able to wear something without having to, like, worry about wearing fancy accessories or things to school, right? That's
Yeah.
sort of the only real logic and rationale which works. Everything else is all pretty nonsensical.
Now, since the passage of this order as well, this issue has been heard in the Karnataka High Court. So,
Mhm.
did this order get the legal scrutiny that you were talking about as well, or what happened there?
No, I know, and the problem is that it didn't. And
Mm.
in the High Court, there's a bunch of different petitions. Some of them were filed by some of the women, the girls who were originally denied entry to their pre-university college classrooms, the ones from Udupi, because they were wearing hijabs. There's one set of
Mhm.
them. Then there's another set of students who were in fact stopped on 3rd February, who had been wearing, and they've written this in their petition, that they've been wearing the hijab for the last 2 years without any problems with the school administration. Just now, however,
Mm.
after what happened in Udupi, and now reinforced by what the government order has said, they're now not being allowed to wear it into their classrooms. So they've also filed a petition in the High Court. Now, what they've done is, now there are two things which they've done. One is that they're challenging this, just the very idea of these kind of
Mm.
classroom bans on hijabs. So they're
Yeah.
challenging that, saying that this is a violation of the right to privacy, right to freedom of expression, but most importantly, it's a violation of their right to practice their religion and faith.
Mhm.
Which, while again, I mean, obviously, you can't say that your religion allows you to do anything you want whatsoever. You can't say, "Oh, I'm allowed to commit murder," or "I can ignore the criminal law because of that." But
Mhm.
where where you're talking about things which are personal choices and personal decisions for your own self, as long as you're not obviously doing, affecting anyone else, you are allowed to practice your religion as you want it, under Article 25 of
Mhm.
the Constitution. And now the thing is, obviously, if there's a conflict between something where the state is trying to do something with a particular social objective, like trying to improve equality or unity or whatever,
Yeah.
the state can obviously there are restrictions which can be imposed on your right to practice religion, but, like, not on something which is an essential religious practice, right? Unless,
Mhm.
obviously, that essential religious practice is supposedly you going and knocking off someone's head. It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. But the thing is, now, so that's one end of the argument which is there. There's also, again, a challenge in one of these petitions to the government order on the same lines which we've discussed, right? Is there
Mhm.
scope for the Karnataka government to actually even pass this order? What does it actually do? Is what does the text of the order even make sense?
Mhm.
Because, arguably, and this is something which senior advocate Sanjay Hegde told us, and now he's in fact arguing it in the High Court as well. He had told this to us for the article which we'd done, and he pointed out that, look, if you look at the wording of the order, it doesn't specifically ban hijabs or whatever, right? So
Mhm.
if you just take it as it is, then it's actually kind of meaningless if you take it purely on its own wording, because it doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really ban any
Mhm.
hijabs. It doesn't really ban any item of clothing, because no item of clothing can be violating equality or unity of public order, right? As we mentioned
Mhm.
earlier. So, on the other, but it now, if it is used to say, oh, you can't put this headscarf on, or you can't do that, then it starts to become unconstitutional, then, because then you're infringing on the rights without the order itself expressly making that comment. So these are the things which are being raised in the High Court. But
Mhm.
and there is let's be clear, there is going to be some amount of debate over this issue, because the Kerala High Court had in 2016 said that yes, the wearing of a hijab for a Muslim girl um, is very much part of their essential religious practices. Therefore, it allowed girls to wear it who were sitting for like these medical entrance exams, which the
Mm-hmm.
dress code per se would not have allowed them to go in wearing a hijab. Now, that's what the Kerala High Court said in 2016. But there are certain other decisions of the court, of other courts, which which aren't quite on the same page exactly. Like there's one from the Madras High Court from 2006 where it doesn't like hold that, oh no, it's not an essential religious practice, but it refers to certain commentary on the Quran and things, and which say that it is not a full-fledged essential religious practice for Muslim girls. So there is
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount of debate over what's to be done here. So
Okay.
yes, the court's going to have to take its time to hear that, and that's why a single judge of the Karnataka High Court was hearing it earlier. He then referred the matter, so it's being heard now by three judges, what's called a full court, full bench of the High Court, headed
Mm-hmm.
by the current Chief Justice of the Karnataka High Court. Now, what the problem with, of course, the way the Karnataka High Court has dealt with it so far is that they've not passed an interim order protecting rights till the court makes a decision. They have
Mm-hmm.
passed an interim order, but it's actually gone entirely the other way, and it's absolutely shocking that it's done that. What they've said is that, I mean, the text of the order was finally released today after it had been sort of mentioned yesterday by the judges, where they've asked, and I'm going to quote here, that pending consideration of all these petitions, we restrain all the students, regardless of their religion or faith, from wearing saffron shawls, bhagwa, scarves, hijab, religious flags, or the like within the classroom until further orders. Now, this is
Mm-hmm.
supposedly being done to ensure, peace and tranquility and no public order problem. But it beggars belief that the court has compared all of these things in a similar way and passed this blanket order. Because now this blanket order, if it goes, potentially means you can't even have Sikh boys wearing a pagdi or a turban
Yeah.
to the classroom, right? Because it says anything which religious flags or the like. I mean, it's so badly worded, it's so vaguely done, and it just casually dismisses something which these girls consider to be
Mm-hmm.
integral to their faith. Now, you and I
Yeah.
don't have to agree with it, and the court is going to make a final determination where they will say, okay, is it an essential religious practice or not? And at that point, then it may just say that, look, you know what, that isn't enough to say that there is an essential religious practice. Therefore,
Mm-hmm.
if you're told by your school or your college not that you can't enter wearing a hijab, you have to comply with what they say. But it is also possible that the court could hold the contrary, right? If it goes the way the Kerala High Court did, which had done a fairly decent examination of the case law and the precedent and the law on point,
Mm-hmm.
what happens then? Then you're saying that during this time, which could take a week, 2 weeks, maybe even more than that, you're saying these girls then have to choose between their freedom of conscience, right, and what
Mm-hmm.
they believe to be integral to their dignity, and going to school or college, to go actually to attending their classroom. I mean, it's what the senior advocate Devdutt Kamath, who was representing one of these groups of girl students, he argued this is a suspension of their fundamental rights, and that is exactly what it is. And it's
Yeah.
shocking that a high court is doing this, because okay, look, maybe if there hadn't been extensive arguments before it on the need for an interim order, okay, sure, right? Or if
Mm-hmm.
a prima facie case for how this is a violation of these girls' fundamental rights hadn't been made out, okay, one would understand. But the arguments by Sanjay Hegde, and these were not just things made behind closed doors. These were live
Yeah.
streamed on the Karnataka High Court's YouTube channel. He made very, very compelling arguments for why the order is wrong, why
Mm-hmm.
on statute it's wrong, on constitutional grounds it's wrong, even how he picked up like actually some of those local rules, and he pointed out that even under those rules there is absolutely nothing, like the place where this whole thing started in Udupi, like
Mm-hmm.
the girls are allowed to wear a scarf on their heads, a shawl on their heads, or a dupatta which is of the same color as their uniform, which is pretty much what they're doing. It's just tucked
Yeah.
around their heads in a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
He showed on so many grounds why this is problematic. And then, he argued why there is a compelling interest to pass an interim order that, till that time is there, you're dealing with freedom of conscience, you're dealing with dignity. These are rights which are inalienable. The Supreme Court is held. So you have to do something which is going to protect it till such time as you make a final decision.
Yeah.
That Kamath also did that. He pointed out again, like, all the problems with the order, including the fact that the order makes claims about the law. It claims that there is, that the law, that the courts have said that this is not an essential religious practice, even though there is no clarity. It cites like orders which don't even say that. So there's just so much wrong with this. That clearly there was a need for the courts to say, okay, look, there is this satisfies the test for an interim order, and therefore we should, an interim order in favor of the girls, because there are three things you look at when it comes to an interim order. You have to say, is there a prima facie case for it? Is there who's suited by the balance of convenience? As in, if the order is passed, who's being convenienced, who's being inconvenienced, and then the last thing you have to say is, okay, if the order is being passed in a particular way, is it going to cause irreparable harm or injury to one set of people? And in this way, on all these grounds, an order saying, okay, till we've decided, we are not going to protect those girls' rights, it fails every single test. Because the girls very much have a prima facie case. The court may eventually hold there is no essential religious practices, right? But at the current moment, the Kerala High Court decision is the most specific and relevant to the issue, right? So they have a prima facie case based on that. The balance of convenience, who is being inconvenienced by these girls continuing to wear this, right? Like, it's not as though other people are being forced to do it. It's any student objecting to them wearing it is not doing it because they are being harmed. So there's absolutely no, the balance of convenience is very, very much in their favor. And in fact, if it is eventually held, as these girls are claiming, that this is integral to their freedom of conscience, to their right to practice their religion, to their identity, to their dignity, no matter how many days, even if it's just a few days that you're stopping them from doing that, that is irreparable harm and injury, right? You're literally forcing them to choose between their education and their faith without having got a final determination on what their faith says. So it's every single legal ground, every single logical ground. I mean, we know what is going on here, right?
Our colleague Nicola also reported recently that their personal details also of these girls, 6 girls, were leaked reportedly by the college as well. Their the addresses, the phone numbers, the bank account details of the parents. So there is.
The thing is, there's so much bad faith here. There's so much bad faith here. What is being done is a clear communal attack. It's so obvious from what's happening. Like, the court expresses its concern over, there's protests and there's problems happening and the students should be going back to their classroom. I mean, who is causing this, right? It's not, these girls have at no point caused this problem. They are not the ones who have gone out heckling other students. They are not the ones who have stopped kids attending classes. They are not the ones who have vandalized school property and gone and hoisted like their religious flags at schools. They are not the ones doing this, right? So what is instead, what the order actually does is, it is rewarding those who have done this against the girls. It is rewarding those who have created the public order situation and instead threaten the girls. This is not what a court of law is supposed to do. A high court is supposed to be a constitutional court. Our constitutional courts are supposed to be what they call sentinels in the qui vive. It's a Latin term which the Supreme Court recognized back in the 50s, that this is, it's essential for the courts, the constitutional courts, right? Your high courts and the Supreme Court, to, take an active role in protecting the fundamental rights and stopping them from being damaged and stopping any way in which this, people are unable to exercise their rights. All these grounds, the Karnataka High Court has, it's I mean, we normally try to be reserved and careful when, we're talking about judicial orders. This just doesn't mean, and the worst part is, if the order had at least addressed all the points made by Kamath, by Hegde, by, the petitions, maybe you could say, maybe I disagree with it, but on law, they've got it right. But they've done nothing. The order, like, it basically looks like the High Court, the Karnataka High Court Chief Justice had already made up his mind before listening to what these guys had to say and just bulldoze that at the end of the day, without there's no acknowledgement or recognition of the arguments made by them and arguing around that. Like, arguing around what they've pointed out, the irreparable harm and injury and everything. Nothing. Like, I mean, and if you heard the Chief Justice yesterday in court, he is just like dismissing, no, it's just a matter of days. I mean, this is not how a constitutional court is supposed to function. This is not how the law is supposed to function in this country. And it makes what's already a really horrible situation and something where people's rights are being violated just makes it so much worse.
Okay. Well, now the next hearing will be on 14th February, and I'm sure we'll hear your analysis also sometime next week.
Just a quick reminder that it's not just that now that one of the girls has also filed a petition in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And there's also now a challenge to the interim order filed in the Supreme Court, because 14th is just when the case starts, right?
Yeah.
It could go on for at least a week, and it likely will. It go on for at least a week, right? So during that time, this interim order is in force. It's going to allow colleges to stop girls from entering. So there is now a challenge to that interim order in the Supreme Court. CJI Ramana has said they will consider it at the appropriate time. So that will possibly get heard on Monday as well in the court, now that the actual text of the Karnataka order is out. So that's one thing to keep in mind next week, along with the arguments and merits as well.
To catch the latest updates on this story, tune in to the Quint's website and follow us on our social media handles.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to The Big Story for episodic updates. We're available on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website, and for any feedback, please shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.